Hi, everybody. It's Lori, GLP-1 Journey in Review. Let me just put my phone on to Do Not Disturb. And I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I know I am. Work 6 days straight this week, but hey, got to do what we got to do. Got some new equipment, so I'm trying out some new stuff. I'll be trying out some new stuff all along. Have some interesting stuff coming out. Just had a video coming out on the carnivore diet and people with using it on GLP-1 medication. And I don't know if it's kind of a fad or what. I mean, I know the diet's been around forever. I personally don't see how it could be healthy. Hi, Carol, how you doing? Um, but like I'm willing to hear and find out about it. I know years ago, eating foods, or having a diet with carbs or fats in it seemed taboo. And now on the GLP-1 medication, we are having some, at least the healthy ones. We're learning better how to eat. So why not take a, look into it? Again, I'm one of these old-fashioned people that, went with that food pyramid and just can't see a food or a diet without fruit and vegetables. But like I said, I'm always willing to change. I don't know if I'm willing to do that, but I am willing to change it or at least hear about it. So I have an interview coming out with actually a relative of mine who is on the carnivore diet, and he's going to explain, how he's doing it. I think he's like 90% onto it. He's working into it slowly, which is probably a good thing rather than just doing it all at once. So we'll see what he has to say. He's not on GLP-1 medication, but I don't know a lot of people that are on both. I know some people have mentioned that they've tried it. I know one of my subs said that she's tried it and actually gained weight, but did get some good gut health out of it. So, there may be some benefits to it. Uh, this could be something somebody could try short term for, um, a month or so, maybe to see how it does with their thing. So that's why I'm actually looking into some of it and applying what I know or what I learned to you. Hi, Little Leaf. How's it going? Uh, Luciano, hello. I'm sorry if I'm missing some of these, are coming up pretty quickly. So I also wanted to talk to you about the so-called recall on Akita, or however they're pronouncing it this week. Uh, Supposedly a letter came out in Massachusetts, and I don't know how real it is or if it's a scam. It's very little information on it. I know when I actually saw the letter, there were a lot of typos and misspelling and bad punctuation, which kind of made me think, well, maybe this isn't so real, but um, why would they only do it in one state? But so that I don't know if it's real or not, but I know Mochi is still having some problems. Um, they supposedly issued me a credit for, I think, the last 3 or 4 times that they sent out my medication. They charged me for the 3 month delivery and only gave me one. And on their website, it says that it's processing, but it's been like 14, 15 days. By the time I thought about giving them a call, it was already like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I know if I get them when I'm getting ready for work at like 4 in the morning, I usually don't have a hard time reaching them. So if any of you really need to reach them, hint, call them at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, much better luck. But again, um, it, I don't think technically it's been the 14 business days that they told me it might take for the refund, but it does say on their site that a refund uh, ha has been created. So I checked on my charge card, it hasn't been applied to it. Um, so, you know, We'll see. I'll give him a call this week. I know with all these, if this recall is real, I personally think that's going to be the end of Mochi because they're not handling this real well. And, I know they say that they don't own it, but come on, it's Dr. Myra's husband that actually own the Akita pharmacy. So, I'm sure there's some ties there, and she technically was CEO of that also, so we'll have to wait and see. Um, and that's pretty much the Mochi news. I'm trying to see how Orderly would be. I used them in the past. They did have a special. The doctor reached out to me via text, and for some reason he wants to start me off at 12.5 instead of the 15. And I'm kind of arguing a little bit back and forth because I'd rather get the 15, even though I'm on 7.5, it'll stretch it out a little bit more. So, we'll see, at the special that they gave me, if I have to take it at, 12 point, I think it was one at 12.5 and the other two at 15. I'll do that if I have to, but, I'd really like to get all of them the same thing. We'll see. I I don't know how I really feel about them reaching out, and everything that I've done with Orderly, because like I said, I've used them before, has been with the doctor on text and no real interaction. Medically, I don't know if that's the best idea. Personally, you know, I've used it before, so in that point, I don't care. But like I said, I'm kind of divided on some of that, so we'll wait and see what happens. Um, Doing maintenance. Been on maintenance since January. Uh, this Saturday, which was yesterday, I lowered my dose again. I tried 5 and had a lot of food noise. I kind of guesstimated for about 6 because I'm using compound. I could do that. Um, we'll see how it is. I know last night I got kind of like a severe craving attack, but that could have just been me because it was a long day, and shot day. I really don't eat much, and then all of a sudden it was getting a little bit late, and I'm kind of like, I'm hungry. Well, as long as I'm hungry, maybe there's a little bit of food noise there, so I'm might have to go back up to 7.5. Like I said, it's all kind of a trial and error thing, so we'll see how that goes. um, I don't know what dose everybody's on. Again, if you haven't stocked up on your compound, I think now is a good time if you could still get it. I know Orderly is still selling it. I know some of the other companies are. I I personally, other than the overcharging, have had very good uh, luck with Mochi. Now, if I would have gotten those credits, I would have stuck with them, but I don't want to have to go through that again and have to pay for a 3 month for one. um, if I don't get this settled within a week, I'm going to dispute it on my credit cards, and then they're just going to be out of luck. And I know once you dispute with them, you're kind of out of their files and off of them for good. But hey, I don't know how much longer compounding is going to be around. If I have to go to Orderly and pay just a little bit more, that's what I'll have to do. But I have a decent stockpile, so I'm not too worried. But like I said, if it's if you haven't, it may be a little late, but is that Factor? Hi, how you doing? Let's see, there we go. How you doing? We're talking about quickly about the Mochi incidents, about the recall, the fact that I'm on maintenance. I've actually lost 2 pounds on maintenance, and like I said, it's been almost 4 months that I've been on maintenance. But today, I guess after that little bit of a munchie attack, I'm back up to where I should be. Hopefully, it'll stay there because yeah, I don't really mind if I drop a pound or two, but that's not my intent. And if I do drop a pound or two, I hope to go up. But I want to go up eating healthy stuff. I don't want to just say, "Oh, hey, I'm down, another 2 pounds. Let's have a piece of cheesecake," because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. If I get the craving for cheesecake, I don't know, maybe I'll take a small piece and split it with my wife because, again, I think with this GLP-1 medication, and since this is a lifestyle change, that we should have nothing off limits. Moderation is the key. Probably haven't been hydrating quite as much as I should be, so I'm making up for that. I got all my drinks here. I have my Circle cup here. My Circle review, I think, comes out tomorrow. I really like Circle, and it does help me hydrate. A little bit noisy. Sure, let me get this microphone up here. I'm sure you can probably hear it anyhow. Um, that's my only big thing with them is it's noisy. And it's like I don't really like noisy drinks, but hey, if that's the worst thing in life, I'll deal with it. I'm glad you're doing well today, Baxter. Um, I actually went to my um, primary care physician. He was very happy with my weight. He gave me a prescription for blood work. For some reason, the Quest, which I go to, I don't know, maybe next time I'll switch to LabCorp. The first time that they have an early morning appointment is like a month from now. But there's really no rush. I had blood work through Mochi, just basic A1C, kidney function, just some basic stuff, not the full lab work like he's ordering. I had that about 2 months ago. So, Silver Eagle, UK. Hey, they're in the UK. So what? I think it's like 8 hours later there. So it's like 10 o'clock at night. So, hope you're having a good night. It's only afternoon here. So, um, so I'll be getting my blood work. I think it's like, I don't remember if it's the beginning of next month or the very end of this month. Because since I can't eat and have nothing but water, I just figured I'll get it done at like 6:45, and then where I work out is just right around the corner there. I usually don't eat before I work out anyhow, so that's not a problem. And when I get those results, we'll go over them. Everything on my last one was great. My everything so far is great. My doctor's really happy with the weight. He's happy with the weight loss. He's a little old-fashioned, so he'd love to see me get off of the GLP-1 medication. Um, he's not happy that I'm on compound. He's one of these name brands, which a lot of doctors are. And again, they're more worried about being sued. Again, I work in the healthcare profession, so I understand that. But we got to do what we got to do. I don't really feel like spending 1,200, 1,400 a month, or getting it through Eli Direct at, or they don't even, I think it was $4.99. Um, but worst case scenario, that is an option. It still is cheaper than going to CVS and getting the pharmacy. Hopefully, they will bring prices down because that's really what's going to sell for them. Uh, the they're working on it. They're not quite where we would like them to be. If they could go down another $150 or so, they would be putting the compounding pharmacies out of business. I don't know how long that would take. There's ways, for them to do that. The pharmacy benefit managers of the PBMs, if they limited them or got rid of them altogether or had Congress step in and do something, that could happen. I know that the Trump administration, not that this is a political channel, has uh, said no, they're not going to have Medicare cover these weight loss drugs, because if they did, that would bring down prices everywhere, because Medicare would negotiate a price, and that would bring down the prices. At least they didn't totally 100% say no. They said, we may look into it later. I don't exactly know what that means, but it's better than just saying, no, it's off the table next. So we'll see. Um, you know, and with the new medications coming out in a year, that might bring prices down. And I'm kind of looking forward to the oral medication because that might be just what I need for maintenance, and it doesn't need refrigeration. So I would guess that price might come in at 100 to 250 per month, which cheaper than the compound. Um, if it works, fairly similar or at least good on maintenance, I'm not, I'm a loyal person, but I'm not that loyal. I'll do what's good for me. Prices are never going to go down. Let me put this up here. Prices are never going to go down to the 1950s. That's what I heard from some of the guys that are coming back to the 50s. God bless everyone. Well, here's the thing with that. Eli Lilly for the last couple of quarters have not met what they promised their stockholders they would do. So the stockholders are mad. Even though they're making billions of dollars, they thought they should do better. So charging these astronomical amounts of money for the medication obviously isn't working. So they're attempting through Eli Direct, and the same thing goes to with Wegovy and Novo Nordisk. It has come down, but they need to come down even more because, like I said, selling it at over $1,000 a month isn't working. They're not meeting their prices. They're not making their stockholders happy. So they have to try something different. The other thing different would be to lower the price and sell more. I mean, that's just basic economics. I see anybody in here now. Oh, hi, Sharik. I'm sorry, Shaquille. I'm glad you made it into here tonight. I know it's a lot later where you live. He's from Bangladesh. Uh, what's with the brick wall? Well, my wife has the office because that is where she does her work and she works from home. So I'm kind of like stuck in the bedroom. And really, the best place in the bedroom is on the bed, and I just don't like the way it looks with me sitting in bed. So I put a brick wall and a green screen. I've changed it a couple times, but that's what's up with the brick wall. Simple as that. Um, so back to Eli Lilly and Nova Nordisk. They're making a lot of money, but like I said, they're falling short to their stockholders, and that's very important. Because they're you know, they rely on their stockholders. So if they can't make it by selling it at, $1,000 or 1,200, they're going to have to do something. Now they just came out with the Zepbound in India, and they're making it available for $50 a dose, which comes out to $200 a month. India is a pretty big country, but they could get more in America, so they are. But there's got to be that halfway between. Like I said, if they could come down to like 250, 275, I wouldn't even consider using compound because, why would I? It's, the same price, if not cheaper. I don't think the compound companies could come down too much more. And like I said, even if they do, you know, that's a choice people have to make. Who wouldn't want regular brand compared to compound? As far as these additives, they say that they don't, they're basically B6 or B3. I've read that a couple of people are getting a little, not sick, but having a little bit of side effects from them. I don't have the research to back that up. That's just what I'm reading. So, again, keep that in mind. Um, I think one of the biggest things that can help with any side effects is hydration. People just don't know how important hydration is. Besides the fact that it keeps things in you moving, it helps the GLP-1 medication. It's good for your kidneys. You have to flush out the fats somehow. So, yeah, it's just so good for, our bodies are 70% water as it is. So, we have to replenish it, and hopefully you're doing some sort of exercise, uh, especially weight training would be good. But just moving is very important. So again, that burns the calories, burns the fat, and even though you literally don't think you're sweating, you are. You need the hydration to replenish the fluid that you're losing from just everyday activities, let alone from working out. So, sip of my water. I think I put cherry flavor in here. My favorite on the circle is the coconut pineapple. But they're most of them are pretty good. There's a few. Their lemon ones have a pretty fake taste to them. But uh, I hope you guys caught our video on frozen breakfast. Again, processed food, not my number one choice, but again, moderation. Yes, I eat some processed food. I try to keep it to a minimal. Um, that wouldn't be my number one choice for breakfast, although I do have a protein shake, which is considered processed food. But to me and to other people, and to doctors at least, it's a healthier of the processed foods. But our breakfast, frozen breakfast, like we had some egg wedges, some bowls, some burritos, egg bites. Again, if I am going to have breakfast, I'll just scramble an egg, or just have an egg or two, or something like maybe some whole wheat toast or something along those lines. Um, Trying to again stay away from as much processed food, because too much processed food also isn't good for you. So, then again, they say breathing, that what you breathe in isn't the best for your lungs. You got to do what you got to do, and everything is moderation. So that's part of it. And again, like I said, nothing should be off limits on the GLP-1 medication. It's moderation. Last night, I was having a craving for a chocolate covered pretzel. If we would have had them, two of them would have been fine. Where, before the GLP-1 medication, I would have ate the whole box and looked for more. So, you learn something, and, hopefully, we've changed our habits, because, like I said, this is a way of life now. And, for me, it's a pretty much forever thing. Um, I want to be healthier. Uh, I want to enjoy life a little bit more. I want to be able to do more. And I know they say that the GLP-1 medication sometimes, drains some of your energy. Excuse me, but I have found that I am more energetic. Part of that has to do with, yes, I work out. Yes, I make sure I get my steps in. I try to keep very busy. Uh, that I'm sure that all helps. And that all helps with the weight loss and keeping things moving in your body. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're figuring out what you're going to be doing and what your lifestyle is going to be. Even my wife is doing her chair yoga and taking walks. She has COPD, so she can't really, go do a lot of the workouts in the gym. Trying to talk her into going to physical therapy so that they could help her figure out some exercises. Plus, she really used to like the pool exercises and stuff. And we do live in South Florida, and you know, yes, you could go into a pool all year round here, but the water is a little bit cold right now in a lot of pools. Even though it's heated, they don't overly heat it. But it is coming to time where the water is going to be warmer, and we could always run over to the pool with a little noodle and try to do some exercises in the pool and so forth. So we'll see how that goes. But she's working on it. That's the important thing. Again, you don't have to do a lot if you can't, but anything extra you could do, and you're going to be surprised. The more extra that you do, and you're going to say, "Hey, I feel better doing that." The more you're going to want to do. So definitely. It's a good thing. Uh, I know when like this week I didn't have, I worked 6 days this week, and I didn't really have as much time to exercise, and I didn't feel as good. I mean, I didn't feel bad, but I didn't feel as good. Normally I work out for like an hour and a half. Now, part of the, it's not quite that long, but I switch gyms. First, I go to my hot works because I like to do it in the sauna, and depending on which hot works I go, one of them I could literally walk next door, and the gym I go to is there. The other one I have to drive like a mile, and I do take a little rest in between because once you get out of the sauna, you're kind of sweaty, and you want to kind of cool off a little bit, and make sure that I hydrate a little bit more because I know that I've lost a lot of fluids working out in the sauna. So I'll drink a bottle of electrolyte water or something, and make sure that I'm back to being hydrated enough, then take off to the other gym. So probably it's really only a little over an hour and 10 minutes that I work out. It just takes that amount of time. So again, I keep trying to be busy because the more you move, the more energy you use, the more calories you burn, the better everything's going to be. It's it's not a magic bullet, the GLP-1 medications. You have to put in a little bit of work. It just makes it a lot easier to do, and it makes it doable. And like I said, really takes away that food noise. And like when I said I didn't even know what the food noise was until it was gone. Like I said, I went down in my dose yesterday. A little bit of food noise. Mm, could have just been a little bit of me. I don't know. I was tired. I have this habit when I'm tired of doing a little bit of night eating, which is a bad habit, which I need to work on. Uh, but we'll see how. It's only been one day that I've taken this dose, so we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Because I'd be a lot happier if I could get down to 5 milligrams, but I might have to do it gradually. And like I said, I got a decent enough stockpile that it's not going to matter. So uh, I don't know what dose is everybody on? What's your favorite dose? You can let me know in the comments. Um, I know a lot of you watch this in replay. You could still let me know in the comments, and I'll bring it up the next live or whatever. I think my favorite dose, I'd have to say, it's a toss up between 5 and 7.5. Probably 5. I think I was on 5 a little bit longer than 7.5, but I had very good results, and I think that was the dose that I was on the longest. Uh, Obviously, due to a stall, and I went up. Um, I did try to stay on it a little bit longer, and I was talking to the telehealth doctor. Uh, so we ordered one more 5, and I think midway through it I'm like, nah, I think it is time to, I'm still having that stall. I've changed what I'm eating, I've changed my exercise routine, I've gone down in calories, up in calories, trying things. uh, Time to try 7.5, and it's a little bit harder to go back down once you've gone up. A little bit easier in maintenance because again, you're not really trying to lose weight, you're just trying to stay the same. So, basically maintenance is a stall, so to speak. So, that makes it a little bit easier. I just don't like that nasty food noise. Uh, so going over what I'm eating on maintenance, I've added a little bit more carbs, good carbs. Like today I got this like 9 grain bread that has a lot of fiber. I think it's got 5 or 6 of fiber. It's only got 5 calories of protein per slice, but hey, every little bit adds up, and it's 90 calories a slice. So I really wouldn't use it like a sandwich because that's a bit, although I could, I'm trying to stay around, 1,500 calories, where before I was trying to stay around 1,200. Um, Again, not really tracking, but I do try to track my food at least 1 to 2 days a month, just so that what I think I'm eating, the amount of calories is actually the amount of calories that I'm eating, because you'd be surprised. Was going over this with my wife because I think she eats a little bit too little. What she thought was going to be like 1100 and stuff was really only about 800. And, part of the thing is, she's not hungry. So it's like, it's not like you're gonna, oh, well, I have to have another 400 calories. You don't want to say, oh, well, let me have a piece of cake then, because let's see, you're on 10. This is Carol, my wife. Pop this up there. She is on 10 and has been on it quite a while, but having to deal with being stuck. Well, Carol, I know Carol has the doctor was going to put her up to 12.5, but she was wearing one of these sugar sensors. What is it? The Libra 3. And she actually tried, I forgot the name of the other one. She actually tried that one also, and it kept giving her low blood sugar alarms. And she would take her blood sugar and it was actually fine. So, but because it was saying low, they're like, oh no, we have to deal with these low sugars before we could up your dose. So maybe if she tried the one in the stomach, it will work. But her sugars have been so good that I personally, again, I'm not a doctor, don't think that she really needs to have one of those. We have some here in case that she, does run into difficulties. Because if she just wasn't feeling right, the first thing I always say is take your blood sugar, which I'm sure she hates that I'm saying that, but what the heck. One of the things you have to look out for when you're type 2 diabetic. So, Carol, maybe you should make an appointment with Jessica a little bit early and talk to her about this. She'd probably raise you, but keep in mind that when she does raise you, you're not going to be as hungry and you're not making your calories now. Uh, I think it's time to see a dietitian. They have them, telehealth type things. Uh, Insurance should cover it, and possibly go up a dose, maybe do both. That would be my advice. She heard me say this to her last night, but I'm telling all of you so that if you're in any of the same boat, that you'll know what my advice is. Not that I'm a doctor, but this is just my opinion, what I think would work. I am in the medical profession, but I am not a doctor. I'm in imaging, and I've been in imaging for almost 40 years, so I've seen all sorts of things, and well, do have a little bit of knowledge. Sometimes that's, a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. You can always check with Dr. Google, but remember, Dr. Google doesn't have the same degree as your primary care physician or your whoever you see, whether it's a physician, whether it's an assistant or whatever. So you stopped wearing the freestyle. Good, because it was keeping us both up all night. With these alarms. It was crazy how the alarms were, and I'm sure her fingers are probably hurting because like every time it would go off by 4, 5, 6 times a day, and she'd be taking her blood sugar, and it was fine. And not that those finger sticks really hurt, but when you're taking them that much, they don't hurt, but you know that you've done them. Because trust me, I take my blood sugar once in a while because one of my fears, and again, this is just me because doctors have told me that this does not happen, is since I'm not diabetic and I'm taking these medications, will my blood sugar drop? So occasionally I do take it, especially if I'm feeling a little sluggish or just not feeling right. And sometimes you just don't feel right because my blood sugar has been fine, but it can't hurt to take it once in a while. I've also taken my blood pressure because it was literally just about a year ago. I passed out in the store, but I was also on a lot of high blood pressure medication. And I guess I got to the point of losing weight where I didn't really need them. And it was definitely at least too high of a dose. And just kind of passed out, and I was thinking maybe, it's my blood sugar because I work again, I really don't like to have breakfast, and when I do my workout in the morning, I usually eat after my workout because I don't like to work out on a full stomach. So, I thought maybe, excuse me, maybe it was, low blood sugar, but it was my blood pressure. It was ding, 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 bell went off in the head, take your blood pressure, and it was low. And like I said, fortunately for me, working in the imaging, my cardiologist also works at one of the center that I work part-time. He does the stress tests and reads the echoes for them. And I ran into him and he's like, okay, just stop taking the blood pressure medicate. Let's see what your blood pressure is. And it was fine. And I never really had that problem. Although he asked me like, "Are you still feeling, dizzy every now and then?" And I'm like, "Well, once in a while." And he's like, "Well, now that blood pressure isn't a problem, salt is your friend." So that's when I really started taking Element, and I know I like it. My wife really started liking it. We were probably drinking a little too much and probably getting too much electrolytes. So I try to limit myself to like no more than two if I exercise, or one if I don't, but definitely no more than two. And I've got my wife now because I think, again, because it tastes so good, and yes, drinking the water is good, but you don't want to overload your body with electrolytes. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not the best thing in the world. I mean, yeah, they do measure your electrolytes and some of the blood tests and so forth. Speaking of which, when my wife had her blood work not that long ago, they noticed that her B12 was high, and she like couldn't understand it because she's really not taking it. Well, one of the supplements that we were taking, which I really like, this company called Thrive, which is made by Lavelle. I really like their protein shakes. They do contain a little bit of caffeine and they do contain a lot of B12. Well, they also make a pre and probiotic that has like anti-inflammatory in it, and also B12 uh, with the pre and probiotic. And she was taking that. So like as soon as mentioned that to me, I'm like, I think I know where your B12 is coming to. And I showed her, so she's not taking that anymore. Um, so again, be aware of these supplements. Uh, some of them do help. Some of them are a total waste of money. You know, it's hard to tell what's what. And when I first had my list of supplements and gave it to my doctor, he's like, "Ooh, you're putting somebody's kids through college with all these supplements." So I started cutting down gradually, and trying to figure out which are the ones that uh, I really should be taking. Uh, I do take a pre and probiotic, which I also take that Thrive. So, I don't know, maybe that might be the next thing to go. Although it's like taking the GLP-1 medication, I strongly urge people to take a really good pre and probiotic. So, maybe I'll just leave it as it is because I haven't had any problems. I take a zinc because one of the doctors that I go to always, I have chronic sinus problems, always said, zinc is good. And if you look at any cold medication, zinc is usually in there. Forgot the name of the one that you take at the first onset of a cold or something like that, and it's supposed to shorten the duration and stuff. It's basically zinc. So, I figure, okay, zinc is good. D and D3, anybody over 50 probably should be taking that because you're losing anyhow vitamin in your bones, the vitamin D. What else? I take berberine. I've been taking, my wife and I, we've been taking it forever, uh, basically because she was, I guess she still is type 2 diabetic. Uh, and at the time being overweight, I was pre-diabetic. So I figured, oh, well, that's good. That possibly could be one that I take, but then I'm reading, people sing that say berberine and helps with the GLP-1. It's kind of like nature's GLP-1. So, on the fence on that one. Um, what else do I take? Supplements. CoQ10, I take CoQ10 because even though my numbers are really good, my cardiologist right now doesn't want to be aggressive enough to stop my statins because I haven't had any side effects or anything, probably because I take the CoQ10. And I guess I don't really have a problem with that. That's, the CoQ10 is a supplement, the statin is a prescription, a little bit of difference there. Um, I take, what else do I take? Trying to think what stool softener, just preventative. Again, don't want to mess with that because I haven't had any problems and I really don't want to have any problems. So that's it for my supplements. Now, my wife, she takes a little bit more. Um, she's trying to cut down. She's, got to figure that out herself. The one thing that I don't particularly like about some of the supplements she takes are the gummy supplements, because supplements basically aren't regulated, especially the gummy ones, and they tend to have a lot of sugar in them. Um, they'll say that they have 15, 20 calories, and you go, "Ah, that's nothing." But, if you're taking five, six of them, it adds up pretty quickly. And I just don't know if that's the best way for your body to absorb any of the supplements, even though they say most of these supplements you just pee right out anyhow. Um, I've read some articles on that, just the gummy nature of it, just it makes it even harder for your body to break down. Um, Again, if that's the worst thing somebody does, I don't think it's going to hurt you other than the calories. Um, Another supplement we take is magnesium. It's supposed to help really good with sleep. It's supposed to also help with constipation, but just be aware that it doesn't mix with certain prescription medications. So if you're taking them, let your healthcare provider know that you're taking them. Even though I usually don't recommend it, check with Dr. Google to see, if there are any medications that you're taking that it doesn't mix with. And that's pretty much what I take for supplements. I just started taking a multiple vitamin again. Uh, Again, it's one of these. It's a whole food vitamin. You're supposed to take it 3 times a day. Yeah, I'm not too good about that. I'm lucky if I get it in once a day. Um, I tried. I forgot the name of the brand. Um, it wasn't a gummy, but it was like a chew, and it didn't really have any calories. But again, I find, especially if I take them in the morning, I have a problem because I don't eat in the morning. Some of them, a protein shake, since I put yogurt in it, is enough. But like I have my protein shake over like a 2 hour to 2 hour period. It's not like I just, gulp it down. So sometimes it does upset my stomach. So I tend to take it like right after dinner. That for me, that's the best time. I probably could take two, but I'm trying one to see how it is and make sure it doesn't upset my stomach. If that works, I might switch it to two, but I don't think I'm going to take three. Again, because I'm taking a lot of supplements and it's like, too much is, you're just going to pee it out, hopefully pee it out anyhow. So that's it with the supplements. Um, we've gone over that letter that Mochi got about the recall of the medications. The timing of that, excuse me, timing of that was just a little bit suspicious. Um, the fact that the timing of the recall was for medication like almost a year ago, kind of weird. But again, um, I would hope that whoever I would think that this came from the FDA or some sort, or I think they do recalls, but whoever would have written a better letter and, you know, not use capital letters when you're supposed to, and, would have had a little bit better grammar and so forth. So that kind of, like I said, threw out a couple of red flags for me. Um, Again, it could be, somebody unsatisfied with Mochi because we know people are unsatisfied with them now. I really wish they did something a little bit better as far as customer service. I think they could have been a little bit more open and about what was happening. Like I said, I've been like super lucky. I've had 3 shipments since this all started, and I've gotten my medication within 10 days of putting in the order. But like I said, I have this issue with them overcharging me, which for me isn't the biggest thing in the world because, like I said, if I don't get this resolved soon, I'm just going to call my credit card and dispute it. And if they want to get rid of me, fine. Because, with all this going on, that's may not be good for Mochi. I really wish that they weren't taking on new customers because that can't be helping. As a matter of fact, my brother, I was in contact with him like last week, and he was telling me that he's been taking the semaglutide, which I knew, and it just really isn't working for him. And he wanted to try trizepatide. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, great, now that we're having all these problems, now you want to switch. But anyhow, I referred him to Orderly and gave him my code so that he could get $40 off. They have a special for new customers only. The first 3 months, $5.99, where your first month is 2.5, your second month is 5, and your third month is 7.5, which I suggested for him, and then he would get the $50 off. And that brings it down to a pretty good price. And again, if I told him if you keep losing weight on 2.5 and you have the fives, just take half the dose. It'll last longer. What the heck? So we'll see how that goes because even though they're a little bit more money, they're not having these problems and so forth. Uh, so that's who I recommended for him. Uh, I can't really recommend Mochi now. Hopefully they'll get their crap together, and I will be able to because before that I've been nothing but good to say about them. Uh, of all of their pharmacies that they've been using lately, I like the Red Rock delivery only because it was a small package. I mean, when it came from Empower, like it came in the styro container, which total waste, as far environmentally at least, because like you could have put a 6 pack of soda, a 6 pack of beer or whatever in there, and all for this little vial, it kind of seemed like a waste. Where with the Red Rock, it came in a foil bag with a couple of like chemical type of ice packs. It was still cold, and that was in yet another foil bag, and then it was just in a plastic bag besides that. So uh, the whole thing wasn't any bigger than a large Ziploc gallon bag, uh, which I could appreciate because I just really hate the waste. It's like I still have a bunch of these cooler things from Mochi, which I still don't know what I'm going to use them for. I don't really know why I'm hanging on to them, but I am, because I have a little travel thing, that I got on Amazon if we're going to travel for it, that I like. Comes with its own little, icy packs, and the stuff is packed really good. I got a hard shell and a soft shell one, depending on how far we're going and where I'm going to pack it and so forth. Uh, but you never know, I might use it for that. You do 822 push-ups in 1 hour and 43 minutes. That's a lot. Good for you. Sorry, I don't think I could do that many. I was very proud of myself in December. I gave myself a chin up challenge. Started off only doing a couple. Now I do these on a machine since I'm older. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm not like these, 20-year-old people that just, uh, you know, jump on the thing. I use a machine. Just it does make it a little bit easier, but again, I don't want to hurt myself. And I started off only be able to do three or four, and I got up to 30 something. So I was pretty happy with that. You know, we got to challenge ourselves somehow. I was thinking pretty soon when I go to the gym, I'm going to start doing a little bit more planks. Uh, I know that when I was in kickboxing, and I've kind of kept up this tradition of every November having plank challenge, and calling it Planksgiving challenge. So maybe a couple months of doing that of the year might be a good thing. Um, how does everybody else work out? Again, let me know in the comments. Uh, Hopefully, like I do my aerobic part pretty much in the sauna, although my favorite thing, which is called Hot Thunder, they have an exclusive type of rowing machine where you can do a lot of arm work and weight training with the arm work while you're doing the rowing, because it's separate. It's not like a bar that you have on the typical rowing thing. Even when I'm in the gym and do have the typical bar, I try to lift up the bar, get a little bit of arm work in there. But these workouts get a pretty lot of arm work, so that part is pretty well done. So when I go to the gym, I concentrate a little bit more on core, even though the way they have you do the rowing and some of the stuff, you are working your core and my legs. And I have to be a little bit careful with my legs, because I know I probably say this most of the lives when I'm talking about my workout, is I broke my had a fracture in my foot not too long ago. And so I got to be a little bit careful as to, what I do with that, because I don't want to re-injure it. And again, I tend to use the machines because I am a little bit older, and they are geared for not hurting yourself. Uh, where when you're doing free weights, and I used to do free weights when I was younger, and you'll pull something and ooh, I probably shouldn't have quite pulled that way. The machines help you not to do that. Yes, they may be a little bit easier, but as you get older, you have to work a little bit smarter, because we are a little bit more injury prone. Our bones are a little bit weaker, and that's just part of life. So it is what it is. Um, Again, if any of you would be interested, we could be talking about workouts. I could be doing a video on the workouts. I think I've had a couple of shorts showing my workouts, some, especially in hot works. Hot works could be a little bit pricey, but exercise is exercise. You don't have to do it in the sauna. Um, you don't have to pay a lot of money. If you can just buy a very cheap set of free weights. You can buy them used, whatever, dumbbell type things, and you could just be doing little things while you're sitting there watching TV, or sitting in a chair doing chair things. There's plenty of things on YouTube for that. You can buy a set of bands really cheap, and there's a lot of exercises you could do with that. You don't have to go to the gym. If you don't have barbells, you could take cans of something, or bottles of water, that weigh a bit, and use them as your weights. So, money should not be the issue in working out, because there's plenty of ways to do it for free. Just good old fashioned walking is good too. You want to do it with some ankle weights or some arm weights, you might get a little bit more out of it. But like I said, if you don't have them, you know, walk with a couple bottles of water in your hand, same type of thing. Again, you don't have to spend money, but being in a gym does help, and watching other people, sometimes that motivates me, or I'm like, get that aha moment. I've seen people use machines for kind of like off label, not what it's made for, but finding other exercise, I'm like, oh yeah, that would be interesting. I could do that. For example, you could do a lot of like hip extensions on some of the leg machines, even though it's not made for that. And I see how they're doing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, that'll work. So you do learn some things and so forth. Um, I go to Planet Fitness, which my insurance actually pays for, so that's a plus for me. And they have there where if you don't know how the machine works, you could either grab somebody that works there, or if you have the app on your phone, every machine has a little barcode on it. Just scan it in their app, and a little video pops up explaining how to use the machine, what it's for, how to set it up, and so forth, which could be helpful because, some people just don't know and they want to use the machine. And again, just watching other people set it up, you can learn a lot just from that. So that also helps. Um, Anything else? Has anybody tried Lilly Direct? I read online that people are switching to there. I'm trying to get it as cheap as I can for as long as I can. You know, to me, Lilly Direct last resort. But like I said, I could probably do for almost a year with what I have in my refrigerator. I do have, try to use the ones that the bud dates are. Uh, Coming up first. I try to use those first, but also they're now saying that the bud dates, as long as it's in the refrigerator, it's such a stable thing that it's still good. And I'm one of these people that if it's a very stable medication, I don't care if it's past its bud date. If it's only 99% effective, I'm good with that. But that's just me. I know they recommend not using it, but then again, that's Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk saying that because they want you to buy more. So what would you expect them to say? Yeah, yeah, it's good. Don't. It's funny how when we're in a disaster mode type of thing, like with COVID and all those tests expired. Oh no, it's okay. But if it was something where somebody was going to make big money, oh no, you can't use them. That's just the way it is. Again, we could only change things we could change. So, how about anybody in a stall? I'm working on a video again on stalls. I know I've done them on stalls, but that's people's biggest problems on this medication. Uh, Again, your body gets used to the medication, used to its dose, used to what you're eating. Sometimes you have to change things up. You could try lowering your calories. You could try raising your calories a little bit, changing your exercise routine. All sorts of things. Some people can't go up because they're at the max dose. Sometimes, going up is required, but I would say try a bunch of things first. First thing first is to make sure what you're eating is the amount of calories you think it is. Make sure, big mistake, very well noted, under eating, body in starvation mode, hanging on to the calories, hanging on to the fat because it doesn't know when it's going to get its next fuel next. So in that case, it basically burns muscles, which is worse. And you still have the weight because it's hanging on to that fat. So make sure what you're putting in your mouth is what you think. Make sure change your exercise a little bit. If you're not exercising, try it. Uh, Lots of things you could try. Check with a nutritionist. Again, if you have any type of health insurance, it's usually covered. If that doesn't work, I've been told by a lot of people wiser than me, go out to dinner or just, have, don't go hog wild, but, go out, have that hamburger, whether it's fast food, whether it's at a restaurant, maybe a few French fries. Don't go crazy and have dessert and drink and everything also. But, sometimes, like I said, your body just needs some, you don't know what it is. It could be that it just needs some extra fat. It just needs something. And it might need your body might need to say, here's the fuel I need. Okay, I could start letting go now. And then all of a sudden you start losing again. I would try all that before I go up in dose because once you hit 15, there's nowhere else to go at the moment. Um, at least you know, what's been tested. Like I said, a lot of these compound companies have come up with 16.2 doses, 16.6 doses, but those aren't what's in the study. Am I 100% opposed to doing something like that? No, because it's not a huge dose. Would I be opposed to going up to like 20? Yeah, because that's kind of a big jump, you know. So, that's my advice on stall, working on a video on it. Um, Everybody has them. It's basically meaning that what you're doing is working because, and your body just got used to it. So, look at it that way. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's bad that you're in the stall, but it means what you've been doing so far is working. So look at the good side of it. Change up what you eat, change your routine. Don't let your body get used to something too much. Don't eat the same food every single day. You may want to think about changing your injection site. Um, like I said, try whatever you could, and then if that fails, then talk to your healthcare provider about maybe going up if you have a dose to go up to. So, other videos I told you about the interview I have coming up. The rest is kind of like routine stuff that we normally do, like, tips, new hacks. I have one on, like I've tried uh, cryotherapy. They say that supposedly that you burn X amount of calories, bringing your body temperature down. Red light therapy, which I've talked about before. Hyperbaric chamber. Uh, how much does it work? It helps you feel better, and I don't know how much it actually works as far as dieting or losing weight, I should say, because this really isn't a diet; it's a lifestyle change. Uh, Again, the cryo therapy. It does help with the inflammation, and we all know if you have a lot of inflammation, it's harder to lose weight. If you're type 2 diabetic, it's a little bit harder to lose weight. If you can't exercise because of chronic disease, a little bit harder to lose weight. There's only certain things that we can control. So don't worry about the stuff that you can't control like that. Just worry about the stuff that you can control, which is basically what we put into our body and what we put out, because that's all we can control, and go for the best. Again, I got tips on that coming up, and anything again that you people want to talk about, please let me know in comments. Doesn't really matter what video. I read all of my comments. I try to answer all of them. I'd be more than happy to cover anything that any of you want. um, I actually had somebody ask me about this carnivore diet, which is one reason why I'm covering it. And then I just got a little bit curious because, again, this might be something to, in my opinion, to try for a few weeks just to change things up. Uh, Not quite like Atkins, because Atkins does let you have a little bit of fruit and vegetables. Uh, I would be inclined to go more keto, a very strict keto, before I would go carnivore. But again, options out there. That's why I'm doing this. Let you guys make your own opinion. Um, and that's about it for this live. Hope you all have a good weekend, a good week. Look forward to hearing you. I appreciate all of you watching my videos. If you think they're useful, please like, subscribe, share them with people. It really does help. I'm about 3/4 of the way to being monetized, and then hopefully I could afford to get a little bit more gadgets for you guys to make the videos a little bit more interesting and so forth. Uh, and thank you all. Have a good weekend. And that's pretty much it for today. Bye.